I was only 6 years into the force when I realized how wrong the world really was. You see a lot as a cop: drug busts, gang violence, domestic disputes gone too far. But none of that ever shook me the way this case did. None of it ever made me question what was real. It started with a call just after midnight. 911, what's your emergency? A woman's voice, trembling. I need help. There's someone outside my house. I straightened in my chair. Can you describe them? A pause. Then, they look like my husband. That made me frown. Ma'am, where is your husband now? In bed, she whispered. But I see him. He's outside. Just staring at the house. I signaled my partner, Carson, and we were on the road within minutes. The woman lived on the outskirts of town, past long stretches of empty road and unlit farmhouses. When we pulled up to the house, everything looked normal. No signs of forced entry. No movement in the yard. I knocked on the door. A woman in a nightgown answered, pale, shaken, eyes wide with terror. I swear I saw him, she said. He was standing right by the tree. I glanced over her shoulder. A man, presumably her husband, stood in the hallway, groggy and confused. Ma'am, are you sure? Then Carson spoke. Got footprints. He was shining his flashlight toward the yard, and my stomach twisted when I saw them. Bare footprints. Deep in the damp soil. Leading from the woods to the house. But here's the part that made my blood run cold. They didn't lead away. Whoever had been standing there hadn't walked back into the woods. They had just vanished. I tightened my grip on my flashlight and scanned the trees. Nothing. Just the wind rustling the branches, the distant hoot of an owl. All right, I said, forcing my voice to stay even. We'll check the perimeter. Stay inside, lock the doors. Carson and I did a full sweep of the property. Nothing was out of place, no signs of anyone lurking. The footprints were the only evidence that someone had been here at all. But as we circled back to the car, Carson grabbed my arm. Look at the window. I turned. The bedroom window. A face was looking out. I grabbed my radio. Sir, is your wife in the room right now? A long silence. Then. She's right here beside me. I swore under my breath. Carson was already moving, sprinting back toward the house. I followed, heart pounding as we threw open the door. We searched the house from top to bottom. Every room, every closet, every possible hiding place. No one was there. And yet, when I stepped back outside, the footprints were back. Leading from the woods. Stopping at the window. But still, no trail leading away. We stayed with the couple until sunrise. Nothing else happened, but I could tell neither of them would sleep again that night. As we drove back to the station, Carson exhaled sharply. You ever seen anything like that before? I shook my head. Don't think I ever want to again. I wish that had been the last time. Because a week later, we got another call. Different house. Same story. I was used to weird calls. After 8 years on the force, you stop being surprised by the things people report. Drunks seeing shadows, teenagers playing pranks, old folks convinced their dead relatives are trying to talk to them. So when dispatch sent me and my partner, Ruiz, to investigate a man standing motionless in a cornfield, I didn't think much of it. Probably some farmhand got lost, Ruiz muttered as we pulled onto the long dirt road. Or some guy high out of his mind, I added. But when we got there was no mistaking it. Something was off. The call had come from an elderly couple who owned the property. They met us on their porch, both of them wrapped in thick robes despite the warm night air. He's still there, the old man said, his voice uneasy. Just standing. Not moving. I followed his gaze past the yard, past the empty gravel road, to the rows of tall cornstalks beyond. At first, I didn't see him. Then. A shape in the field. Standing perfectly still between the rows of corn. I felt an odd pressure in my chest. The figure was too stiff. Too unnatural. Even from a distance, I could tell something wasn't right. Ruiz sighed, already reaching for his flashlight. All right, let's go have a chat. We walked down the dirt path toward the field, boots crunching against the gravel. The closer we got, the worse I felt. The air was too quiet. No crickets. No rustling leaves. I turned on my flashlight and aimed it toward the stalks. The beam landed on him. A man, or something like a man. Tall. Thin. His skin too pale, almost gray. He wore a filthy button-up and jeans caked in dirt. But his face. There was something wrong with his face. His features were off, like someone had carved them out of wax and let them melt just a little. His eyes were open too wide. His mouth stretched at an angle that wasn't natural. But worst of all, he wasn't blinking. Not once. Not as the flashlight hit him. Not as we approached. Just staring. "Sir," Ruiz called out. No response. I took a step closer. "Sir, do you need help?" Still nothing. Just that stare. "Drunk, maybe," Ruiz muttered. But I could hear it in his voice, he didn't believe that. I swallowed hard, fighting the urge to back away. Then, the man twitched. Not a normal movement. A sharp, unnatural jerk of his head. His mouth opened too wide, but no sound came out. Ruiz's hand hovered over his holster. "Sir, if you don't respond, we're going to have to." The man's head snapped toward me. My blood turned to ice. He hadn't moved his body. Just his head. Like a doll's head clicking into place. And then he took a step forward. I grabbed Ruiz's arm. Back to the car. Now. We turned and walked, fast. Neither of us spoke. Neither of us looked back. Not until we reached the patrol car. Ruiz yanked open the door, his breathing sharp. What the hell was that? I didn't answer. Because the moment I turned back toward the field, the man was gone. No movement. No sound. Just an empty row of corn. Like he had never been there at all. Ruiz swore under his breath. "We need backup." I nodded, already reaching for the radio. Then, the radio screeched with static. A sharp, high-pitched whine filled the car. Then a voice. Not ours. Not anyone's. It whispered. "Let me in." The static cut off. The radio went dead. The engine stalled. Then, a tap on the window. I turned. A handprint. Pressed against the glass. Long fingers. Too long. I didn't wait. I grabbed the keys, turned the ignition. The engine roared to life. The handprint was gone. Ruiz and I didn't speak the entire drive back. We filed the report. The case was never followed up. No missing persons. No farmhands unaccounted for. The old couple who made the call. By morning, they had vanished too. It was the kind of call that felt routine at first. A trespasser at an abandoned house on the outskirts of town. Probably a drifter, maybe a couple of dumb teenagers looking for a place to party. Nothing unusual. At least, that's what I thought. Until I got there. The house had been empty for years, a rotting, two-story farmhouse with boarded-up windows and a sagging porch. The kind of place kids dared each other to step inside on Halloween. The call had come from an older woman who lived down the road. "Someone's inside," she had said, her voice tight. I saw a light in the upstairs window. But, no one's lived there in over a decade. It was just past 2 a.m. when I pulled up to the property. The place felt wrong before I even stepped out of the car. I couldn't explain it. The air was still. The kind of stillness that presses against your skin, like something is waiting. I radioed in my location and stepped out, my flashlight cutting through the dark. The front door was slightly open, creaking as it swayed in the night breeze. I climbed the porch steps, the wood groaning under my boots. "Police," I called. "If anyone's in there, come out now." Silence. I pushed the door open. The inside was worse than I expected, decay, dust, and the smell of something wet and rotten. The furniture had been stripped long ago, leaving behind only broken pieces and the occasional tattered curtain swaying in the breeze from the shattered windows. I moved carefully through the rooms, my boots crunching against debris. Then, as I stepped into the hallway, I saw the footprints. Not mine. Fresh. Barefoot. Leading up the stairs. I exhaled slowly, my pulse thudding in my ears. I followed them. The stairs groaned with each step, dust swirling in the air. At the top, the hallway stretched into darkness, the peeling wallpaper curling like dead fingers. Then, a whisper. Too soft to make out. Coming from the last room on the left. I tightened my grip on my flashlight, moving toward the door. It was slightly ajar. I nudged it open with my foot. The room was empty. No furniture. No signs of life. Just a single candle burning in the middle of the floor. I felt my stomach twist. The footprints led straight to it. And then, the candle flickered. Not from a breeze. Not from me. But as if someone had just walked past it. The whisper came again. Right behind me. I spun, my flashlight beam slicing through the dark. No one was there. Then something breathed against my neck. Cold. Wet. I lunged forward, heart hammering, nearly tripping over myself as I crashed back into the hallway. That's when I saw it. At the other end of the hall. A figure. Tall. Too tall. Standing just beyond the reach of my flashlight. I couldn't see its face. But I knew it was watching me. I took a step back. The figure took a step forward. A slow, deliberate movement. I didn't wait. I bolted down the stairs, my breath coming in sharp gasps as I stumbled out the front door. The second I crossed the threshold, the house went silent. No wind. No distant whispers. Just an empty, rotting house. I ran to my car, radioed it in. Backup arrived within minutes. We searched every room. There was no candle. No footprints. No one inside. But as I stood in the doorway, staring back into the darkness, I knew the house wasn't empty. Not really. And whatever had been in there, it had been expecting me. The call came in just after midnight. 911, what's your emergency? A man's voice, breathless. I think someone's inside my house. I sat up straighter. Are you in a safe location? A pause. I don't know. That answer made my stomach tighten. Are you alone? I asked. Another long silence. Then, barely above a whisper. I think so. I grabbed my notepad, jotting down his address. Stay on the line, sir. Officers are on the way. He didn't answer. Just breathed. Shallow. Shaking. Then, in a voice that barely sounded like his own. I can hear them. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Who? A quiet, choked sob. I don't know. That was all I needed. I radioed my partner, Ruiz, and within minutes, we were speeding toward the house. The neighborhood was quiet, just rows of old houses and dark, empty streets. But the moment we pulled up to the property, I felt it. Something was wrong. The porch light flickered. The front door was ajar. Ruiz and I exchanged a look before stepping out of the car. Police, I called, resting my hand on my holster. Anyone inside? No answer. We pushed the door open, the old hinges groaning in protest. The house was cold. Not just chilly. Deeply cold. The kind that settles into your bones, that makes your breath curl into mist even when it shouldn't. Ruiz muttered something under his breath. Feels like a damn freezer in here. I nodded, scanning the living room. Nothing looked disturbed, no overturned furniture, no broken windows. But the air felt heavy. Like we had just walked into something waiting. Where's the caller? Ruiz whispered. I spotted the phone lying on the floor near the couch, the screen still lit. No sign of the men who had been speaking to me just minutes ago. Then, a soft thump from upstairs. Both of us froze. Then another. Thump. Thump. Slow. Rhythmic. Ruiz glanced at me, gripping his flashlight tighter. That's footsteps. I nodded, heart hammering. We moved toward the staircase. The house creaked beneath our boots, each step too loud in the stillness. At the top of the stairs, a long hallway stretched ahead, too dark, too quiet. Another thump. The last door on the right. Slightly open. A shadow moved behind it. I reached for the knob and pushed. The door swung open. The room was empty. The bed was made. No signs of a struggle. No footprints on the dusty floor. But the window was wide open. And beneath it, a set of handprints. Pressed into the carpet. Like someone had been crawling. I swallowed hard. Where the hell is he? Ruiz turned in a slow circle, his breathing sharp. Then, in a whisper. The closet. My stomach twisted. The door was closed, but something was off. The slats were bent. Pushed outward. Like something inside had been pressing against them. Ruiz raised his weapon. Come out now, hands where we can see them. Silence. He glanced at me. I grabbed the handle. And yanked the door open. The closet was empty. Nothing but old coats, a few boxes stacked against the wall. Ruiz exhaled. Jesus, man, I. Then we heard it. A whisper. Right behind us. Help me. I spun so fast I nearly tripped. The voice had come from the empty closet. Ruiz paled. We need to go. I didn't argue. We left the room, moving fast. My skin crawled as we made our way back downstairs. I kept expecting to see something. A shadow in the hallway. A figure standing at the bottom of the stairs. But there was nothing. Just the house. Cold. Still. Waiting. Back in the living room, I grabbed the phone from the floor, checking the call log. My stomach dropped. The last incoming call. It had come from inside the house. Ruiz grabbed my arm. We're leaving. Now. We didn't even bother clearing the rest of the rooms. We just walked out. And the moment we crossed the threshold, the front door slammed shut behind us. We jumped, spinning around, weapons raised. But no one was there. Just silence. And that awful, heavy feeling. Like we had just escaped something that wanted us to stay. We never found the men who called. The house was abandoned. No missing persons report. No rental history. Just an empty house on an empty street. But sometimes, late at night, when I'm working dispatch, I swear I hear it again. A whisper over the radio. Help me. I was used to death. It's part of the job. You learn to deal with it, the car crashes, the drug overdoses, the occasional homicide that makes the local news. You tell yourself it doesn't get to you. That you can leave it at work. But there was one case that never left me. One that still keeps me up at night. It was a welfare check. Simple enough. A neighbor called it in, said the men who lived next door hadn't been seen in over a week. His car was still in the driveway. His mail was piling up. That was all we knew when Ruiz and I pulled up to the house. It was an old place, one story, peeling paint, the kind of house where the blinds are always drawn. The air felt wrong. I knocked on the door. Police. Anyone home? Silence. Ruiz went around back while I peered through the front window. The inside looked like it hadn't been touched in days, dust floating in the slanted sunlight, the kitchen table set for a meal that had never been eaten. Then Ruiz called out. The back door's open. That was our first bad sign. We stepped inside, boots heavy against the linoleum. The air was thick with the smell of rot. I've smelled death before. This was worse. We cleared the rooms one by one. The house was empty. No signs of struggle. No blood. Just neglect. And then we reached the bedroom. The bed was unmade, the sheets pulled back like someone had just gotten up. But it was the closet that made my stomach turn. The door was open. And inside, lining the walls, photographs. Hundreds of them. Of us. Of every cop in our department. Taken from a distance. At the station. At crime scenes. At our homes. I grabbed one with a shaking hand. It was me. Taken from outside my bedroom window. Ruiz swore under his breath. What the hell is this? I didn't have an answer. Because then. We heard the footsteps. Coming from the hallway. Slow. Deliberate. Ruiz grabbed his weapon, stepping into the hall. Police. Show yourself. No response. Just the creak of the floorboards. Getting closer. I raised my gun, heart pounding. Come out with your hands up. The footsteps stopped. Right around the corner. I met Ruiz's gaze, swallowing hard. Then, in a voice not quite human. I see you. The lights flickered. And the footsteps started again. But this time, they were running. Straight at us. I pulled the trigger. The gunshot shattered the silence. And then. Nothing. No body. No blood. The hallway was empty. But the closet. The photographs were gone. Every single one. We tore through the house, checked every inch of the property. There was no one. No sign that anyone had ever been there. We filed the report. No explanation. No leads. Just an empty house. A week later, I found a photo taped to my locker at the station. No note. No fingerprints. Just a single picture. Taken from my bedroom window. From the night before. Thank you for watching. Consider subscribing.